Quest for Adventure, dedicated to people who love the outdoors. Brought to you by the new Ford Expedition, the only way to get there. Bass Pro Shops Catalog. Tracker Marine, fish the finest.
This is Glen. Join Flip Pallot and me while we go to one of the most beautiful rivers in the world.
Beautiful river. You know, there's no other place on earth like this part of Central Florida, where these rivers come up out of the ground like this, crystal clear.
Today, Glen is sharing one of his greatest treasures with me, the Silver River. He'll share his perspective above the water, but most importantly, he'll share what's under the river. This silent, watery world was Glen's office for 2 whole years, more than 2,000 hours, while he captured the life cycle and habits of the largemouth bass on film. Gliding along the ceiling of this very unique river is like being suspended in midair, a constant sense of dreamlike floating, interrupted only by the sound of dipping canoe paddles and bird song.
Cliff and I approached the headwaters of Silver Springs and the attraction that has allowed millions of people over the years to share the experience of seeing this unique underwater world firsthand. There are 5 major springs that flow from the underground aquifer, and in each 24-hour period, more than 800 million gallons of water come up from the ground. Beneath the still water surface, also, you will find millions of fish inhabiting the springs.
Glen, what was the source of your original concept for Big Mouth? Where did you first get the idea to do a project like that?
Well, the idea for Big Mouth came when I first went in the water here. For years, I had been a diver, and I had dove up on Lake Erie and other places, but never had been in clear water.
How'd you ever find this place from Lake Erie?
I was down here working on a film with Homer Circle from Sports Afield magazine, and he brought me over here and got permission for me to dive in this clear water. And once I went in, I just decided that I was never, ever going to get out until I had actually filmed sort of the life cycle of the largemouth bass. I read every book that I could get my hands on in the library to see what people were saying about the life cycle of the bass. And once that I got down there and actually documented what was happening, not all of it was the way that it really happened. And so in the process of doing the film, we discovered new things about the largemouth bass. It had been thought for a long time that the female bass leaves the male bass there alone right after they spawn. And in no case is that ever the fact. I mean, I have seen the female stay there as long as 5 days. And the reason she stays is the male needs to fan the eggs, and she guards the outside area and keeps the brim and the other predators away from her.
Why does he need to fan?
Well, because if they don't fan the eggs within the first 24 hours and keep fanning them, a lot of silt will gather on those eggs, and they'll turn into infertile eggs and eventually just decay. And so you don't get a spawn out of them.
After the eggs hatch, there is a period of 2 to 3 days before they start swimming in small schools. The fry are well organized and stay very close to each other. This is a critical period when the male is guarding the fry from other predators, including other bass. After about 25 to 30 days, the growing fingerlings disappear into the shallows. This is the area where, when the fish were about that big, they came in here and disappeared. And the first year, I didn't know it, and I couldn't find them.
Well, where were they?
Well, they're up here in about 10 inches of water.
Under this lettuce?
Yeah, there's literally thousands and thousands of fish that live in this environment right here, right up against the shoreline.
And they stay there until they get
and that's
to a certain
true
size?
on all lakes. The little bitty fish move into real shallow, weedy areas where they're protected. Flip, let me show you what's in this water lettuce. A lot of people think this is just a weed. But what you have here are a bunch of little critters that live in here. Let me just shake these things out here and show you.
Oh my goodness, look at them crawling around.
Look at them swimming around here. See them?
Is that shrimp?
Little shrimp, and they're little crawfish. Whenever you find a place that has a lot of water lettuce like this, that means there's a lot of food for the forage fish. And the forage fish come in, and the little fish, they eat on that when they're just fingerling size, and that's where they grow. The other thing that I think was of interest to people is all the different predators that the bass has.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
just only a few out of thousands survive out of every spawn that they have. And there's every kind of bird, aquatic bird will feed on them. There are other fish that will feed on them, and it takes a toll.
I mean, I noticed other predators in there too that I thought were pretty interesting, and I thought many times about asking you how you got some of the shots with the birds, for example. But I thought maybe I shouldn't ask you to divulge any professional secrets or anything like that. But some of the stuff with the birds feeding on bass and other things was, I thought, pretty spectacular. One of the things that stands out was that bass grabbing that duckling. I had no idea that they would take on something like that. And the way that that female bass carried a turtle out of the nest, I thought was pretty amazing too.
You know, I think another significant thing that we discovered in the filming of Big Mouth was that how the males will gather together and how the females will gather together. And starting 6 days before the spawn, those females will go into logs or into overhanging trees, and they'll bump and they'll start rubbing. And the reason for that is that we found out that they're loosening their eggs, that they're actually trying to break the eggs loose in there so that when it comes time to spawn, that they're ready. And of course then, like 2 days before the full moon or 2 days before they're ready to spawn, they get with the males, and he starts fanning the nest, and she comes in and starts laying the eggs. I think from the standpoint of a scientific discovery, finding out about the fact how important the male bass is to the spawning process. There are many more females than there are males, and so we must protect that male. We must make sure that he is safeguarded. And
how do we do that?
Well, since that film's been on, I mean, I've had a lot of people say that they didn't know that, they didn't realize that, and often when they were fishing in places where fish were spawning, they would catch the male, throw him in the cooler, and then catch the female. And what they didn't realize is once that male's out of there, those eggs are done for, because it's the male that actually protects those eggs for a period of anywhere from 25 to 35 days until they're swimming on their own and the fingerlings go off into the brush.
Well, what would be wrong with just not fishing for them at all during the nesting time?
Well, it would be wonderful if laws were passed to protect the largemouth bass during the spawning season.
In the Big Mouth documentary, the fisherman is also portrayed as a predator. However, the results weren't always in his favor.
The things that were different in that people remember, one is when that fish struck the lure twice.
And let go without getting hooked.
That's it.
I know. I've heard a lot of people comment on that. Everybody's had that happen. And the amazing thing about that shot is that you come to realize that a bass can eat your lure and you never know it.
Yeah. Homer Circle said it changed his fishing habits forever. Once he felt the slightest little tick on his line, from that point on he set the hook.
You know what impressed me was the slow motion effect in that film. Some of the jumping bass and the droplets of water suspended in midair. That was some of the best slow motion work I've ever seen. How did you get that?
But you only get that kind of stuff if you take your time at it. I mean, it isn't something that just comes easy.
Glen named this particular bass Maggie. During the entire filming of Big Mouth, Maggie revealed secrets to Glen, actually introducing him to her world. As Glen's documentary drew to a close, so did the cycle of Maggie's life.
How many down there, you think? Oh, flipper season. Look at all the gar. Those are long nose and short nose.
These ancient fish are called garfish. They've called the Silver River home for countless thousands of years. The garfish are perfectly willing to share the river with all of us, asking only that we not change it in any way, not develop it, not divert it, and especially not improve it by human standards. Our responsibility to be good stewards of natural wonders like the Silver River is a difficult undertaking at today's pace. I hope we're up to the task.
The Silver River has so much to offer someone who loves the outdoors and wants an opportunity to see an abundance of birds and wildlife along with the beautiful springs. When I came here to film Big Mouth over 25 years ago, I had several hundred pounds of camera gear and equipment to wrestle with. Now, with modern digital video cameras, anyone, if they work at it, can produce high-quality visual material that can be used on TV. And now that opens up several possibilities for those who want to pursue a career in wildlife photography.
You know, coming back here to Silver Springs really just makes goosebumps all over my body. I really, I spent 2 years here, and 2 years like being married. I mean, it's when you stop to think about it. And then when I left it, it was hard for me not wanting to come back here and just start filming again. I had to go on with my life, but this is such a beautiful place, and what's nice about it is people can come here. There's an attraction. They can come up the river with their boat, but they can see this place. And, you know, they talk about the 7 wonders of the world. There's nothing, absolutely nothing in the United States that equals the beauty of this place. The critters, the animals, it's just absolutely beautiful. I don't know how to describe it other than, I guess breathtaking would be the best word. It's wonderful.
Quest for Adventure has been brought to you by Ford F-Series. The best-selling trucks are built Ford tough. Bass Pro Shops Catalog. Columbia Sportswear Company. Mako Marine International. Panasonic, just slightly ahead of our time. For additional information, contact our website at www.questforadventure.com.